The Tears of Gaia by Redback Spino. Chapter 11. On the way to Vazia. Florida's eyes slowly opened, and the first thing she was consciously aware of was the hard stone surface beneath her. She was lying on her side on a small rocky outcrop near the foothills of some mountain. Above her, the sky was beginning to brighten as the sun rose. But as her surroundings came into focus, she found that even the warmth of the morning sun brought little comfort. A thin iron chain stretched away from her to a wooden stake that had been hammered into a crack between some rocks. The other end of the chain hooked onto a collar fastened tightly around her neck. Tugging at the collar, she shuddered as the faint smell of leather came to her nostrils from the offending strap around her neck. To her left, she saw with some relief Applejack lying on the rock with her, a small black leather collar and chain around her neck as well. Her hide was darkened with ugly bruises here and there, lingering reminders of the events last night. Slowly in her head, Fluttershy's memory put itself together. They had been with the others, Twilight, Rarity, Pinkie, Starswirl, and had been riding on Tharl's back. Then there were flashes of light as those Blight things swooped in and attacked from all sides. She had been the first to duck down and take cover as the battle began, but from her hiding place about Tharl's spines, she could easily see Twilight and Starswirl, side by side, firing blast after blast of magical energy against the flying monsters. But then there was some explosion. Something enormous slanted to Tharl's side from below, throwing her clean out of her shelter. A rush of air, shrill screams from all sides. Desi felt it, that tingling sensation around her entire form. Some pony had her in a magical grip, most likely Twilight. The tingling became stronger as her magenta magical glow enveloped her, ready to transfer her far away from this dreadful fate. But something caught her and pulled her out of Twilight's grip. There was another blinding flash, and every pony was gone. The rest of the night was a bit of a blur. She, Applejack, and Rainbow Dash, the only remaining ponies, were flown to the ground, where the fight began afresh. She had shied away from the scuffle, eager to get far away from their Blight captors as possible. But out of the corner of her eye, she could see Applejack and Rainbow Dash, bucking and kicking, shouting and swinging, but even their efforts were not enough as the yellow monsters began to overwhelm them. Something snapped at Fluttershy at that moment, and she dived into the fray as well. She managed to get a few nips and kicks in there and here, but even her brave charge was not enough, and soon she and her friends were pinned, chained, and subdued. Even as her nerves finally got the better of her and began to black out, she could still hear her friends, making their captors' life as difficult as possible. The Pegasus gently nudged her sleeping friend, who had just mumbled her sleep in response. She tried again, but a little harder, but to no avail. "Leave her alone, little thing," a voice said behind her. She looked around and found herself face to face with with one of her yellow-eyed keepers. He was a peculiar little thing, scrawny and short, about an inch or two shorter than her. For the most part, he looked like an ordinary colt, except his front legs, which were yellow and clawed, like those of a griffin. His tail was different as well, long and whippy, with a tuft of fur on the tip, like that of a lion. And with all these Blight creatures, his eyes were that chilly yellow and black, and that strange black smoke seeped from his mouth every now and then. "You three may as well relax while you can," he continued, "because we'll be on the move before too long." Another Blightling, a hulking brute of a stallion with short spines sprouting through his cheeks, joined the scrawny one. "I don't know why we even keep these things around anymore. We just saw 3 of them, and they don't have that jewel thingy we're looking for. And if last night was any indicator, they're going to be nothing but nuances anyway." Short One shrugged. "Melgoth's orders. After we searched them, he just gave the order to leave them alone and get rest for the night. We'll be on the move before too long, so you might want to get some food down your gullet, Zaz." The large one, the Zaz, stumbled and mumbled something no doubt vulgar before stomping off to a nearby campfire. The scrawny Blightling cast one look over to the ponies before joining him to grab some breakfast. Fluttershy took the opportunity to get a proper look around herself. Applejack still lay asleep at her side, but to her right she saw Rainbow Dash and whimpered. Her Pegasus friend was not just tethered with chain and collar like Applejack, but it also had a cruel muzzle around tight her snout, and her coat was stained red in a few spots. "She must have put up quite a fight," Fluttershy thought to herself. "Poor Rainbow. She looks dreadful." She took the time to get a good look around at the Blight small camp. They were at the foothills of some sort of mountains, and were in some rocky copse. The Blight with them outnumbered about 20 and 30 in total, maybe a few more. One thing that surprised her was the variety of creatures. so you could tell that most of them were partially ponies, or at least were at one time. But there had also been a handful of griffins and even a few telltale antlers of deer, or a mule teal, as well as several wild animals who had been turned. Some were obviously corrupted, with spines bursting out from under their skin, patches of scale, and a few entire extra limbs. But some were less affected, with a little more than a few spines, or maybe some fangs and tusks, and little else. Those who were talking with each other were speaking in a variety of languages. Some were conversing in normal, common equestrian, while a few were resorting to primitive, animalistic growls and grunts. But she also caught snippets of a strange language that she did not recognize. All she knew was that she wished she could not hear it. She found it difficult to focus on it for more than a few seconds before her head began to throb and her stomach started to turn. Scurrying one returned, a steaming bowl of something in one hand and a canteen gripped in his teeth. He tossed it to the ponies and put down the bowl before them, revealing it to be full of a very unpleasant-smelling gruel of some kind.
"Go on, get some food inside you," he sneered. "This is the last stop before we head to the outpost, and we're not going to carry you. Wake up your friends, or I'll do it for you."
Fluttershy nodded silently, nervously nudged Applejack again, as the Blight sat down with the others. Cowpony's eyes flickered and cracked almost slightly. "Oh, my head's throbbing like nobody's business. Hey, was that food on smile?" Applejack took one good look at the bowl of gruel before them and closed her eyes again. "Don't think much of their cooking. Wake me up when they give us something edible." A pale yellow glow of magic surrounded her ponytail and yanked upward, forcing her upright. A few Blightlings chuckled nearby.
"Didn't your mommy teach you that you should eat what you're given, little pony? It's only food you're getting until the next stop, and that's not for a while,"
shouted the spellcaster in Quietland, an older Blightling, with a curling horn in the middle of his forehead, its short tusks jutting from his lower jaw. The glow around his horn went out, and went back to his food. A small group of creatures watched as the timid Pegasus helped her friends up. The three reluctantly started eating.
"So, Laga,"
The scrying one asked,
"when did you think Morgoth's gonna let us in on his plans? He hasn't spoken since last night." "He is probably just choking because we got the wrong ponies,"
Sartas interrupted.
"The idiot was counting on grabbing us, whichever one had the gemstone he was after, and now he is clueless."
Laga, the horned one, glared at Sartas before adding,
"Sulking, maybe, but clueless, I doubt that. And he wants to save you his sulking Gaddop. The more he sulks, the longer we get to rest."
Gaddop nodded.
"Yeah, I guess so. But besides, he's probably just thinking up some big new plan to get that gem back. You'll see."
Sartas chuckled humorously.
"You wanted to say something, big guy?"
Gaddop growled at Sartas.
"Oh, nothing. Anyway,"
Laga continued,
"if you guys are so curious, maybe someone should go ask the guy."
There was general murmur of agreement from the small group, but none of them seemed willing to get up and do just that.
"Ugh, don't jump in all at once or something, you buzzaloo jackal."
Laga muttered as he got up. He tossed what was left of his food to his cohorts and headed to where Morgoth was seated. No pony could read it on his stoic, mercilessly face, but on the inside, Morgoth was fuming.
"All this build-up, all this hard work tracking down these ponies, setting up the ambush, taking out that dragon, and what follows us? We grabbed the wrong damn ponies! 4 of them get away, 1 of them with the tears, and they've gotten to who knows where." "Muggle, sir."
His inner racing was cut short as he looked up and Laga was standing before him.
"What is it?" "Well, you see, Morgoth, the others are starting to wonder what we are going to do now, since the ponies from the tears thing you were after have disappeared and are stuck with those 3 instead. What's the plan?"
Morgoth smiled, a cruel, deadly smile.
"You mean Sartas is starting to wonder?"
Laga nodded.
"Yeah, him mostly, but he's got to keep talking. I guess he just wants to know if you have any sort of plan now." "It so happens I do," he replied. "Yes, it's a pain those ponies got away from us with the tears, but at the very least, we've got some hostages now. If we do find them, we cut them a deal. Their friends' lives for the tears." "But we don't even know where they are!"
Morgoth smiled wide.
"Maybe not, but I'm sure our little hostages may have some idea where they could be heading. We're just about a day or two's journey from Mordhall. Seems as good a time as any to get to the outpost and rest a bit. And then, if our little hostages refuse to talk, we can sit them in the pits for a bit of fun. The pits? What good would...
Laga paused as he spied his commander's raised eyebrow. He grinned.
Oh, those pits.
A few things in there ought to loosen their tongues,
Laga said.
And that's not the only thing of theirs will loosen, if you know what I mean.
Laga tackled at the soldier's little joke.
All right, tell the troops to strike camp and get the ponies on their feet. We head for Mudhole in 5 minutes.
Laga saluted and hurried out to spread the word, but stopped and turned back a moment.
Does he think we should tell the big guys back in Brasnaka about this?
Mulgaz got up and stretched, donning his cloak once more, standing atop the rocks.
Why? They'll just yell at us and demand we give them the hostages so they can turn them.
Where's the fun in that?
Within minutes, the campfires were out, and the Blight were assembled and ready to go. In the middle of the group stood the 3 ponies, each of their chains held by another Blight-like soldier. As flavorless as the gruel had been, the ponies were now awake and fit enough to walk. Rainbow Dash was wobbling a bit, still weak from remaining injuries. And all 3 were hunched together under the weight of their shackles. Fireside looked up as Mago stood tall at the head of the pack.
Now, listen up, you lot. It's a long ways to Brasnaka, so instead, we're taking a little detour. The outpost of Mordhall is only a day and a bit from here, so we can head there. We're not stopping until we get there. But once we do, we can have a nice long rest while we have a little chat with our new friends here.
Melissa's chuckle echoed throughout the company. A few eyes turned to face the 3 ponies. Fireside recoiled, trying to hide behind her own mane. With a final barked command, the Blights were on their way, jostling and pulling the 3 ponies along. Fireside looked out to the horizon one last time before she tried clumsily to keep up.
Please, she prayed. Please, some pony, any pony. If you can hear us or see us, please, help us.
As the early afternoon sun began its descent, Twilight Sparkle found herself and her friends being led through the foothills of the western mountains by the 3 griffins. The trek had not been too difficult, since it was mostly through flatlands, and the group had been going at a leisurely pace, so they made good time with the walk, spirits relatively high.
How much further do we have to go?
Reggie asked them from the middle of the column. Gilbert turned around mid-air, hovering expertly backwards.
Not too far. You know that's here when you see it, trust me.
Twilight asked,
Have you ever been there before? It was a long time ago, yes, back when I was young, Grunda replied. But back then, it was a relatively new place. I'm just going by what I've heard, but apparently it's expanded into a full-blown stronghold by now.
Pinky turned to Gerard, who flew beside her.
So, it's your first time there too, then?
Yeah, can't wait.
The young griffin nodded. As the group chatted to each other about how they hoped to find a vizier, Starswell tore her head and muttered mostly for Gilbert to join him.
What is it, Starswell?
He asked.
I'm just curious about something. What exactly have you heard about these creatures that are abroad? The other ones.
Gilbert shrugged.
Not much, to be honest.
I just heard that they're dangerous and to be avoided at all costs. Why do you ask? Oh, no reason in particular,
Starswell replied.
I was just curious if you knew anything we might have not known. If only we knew a bit more about these Blight's motivation.
These what?
Blight, those creatures. They are known as the Blight. Anyway, if only we knew a little more about their motivations, we might have some greater idea where they took our companions.
Maybe, yeah.
Gilbert traded off a bit.
Anyway, I was curious about something myself. Those mares you're traveling about. They certainly seem to be close friends with each other. But what's your connection with them?
Connection?
How do you mean?
The old wizard asked.
Well, you know, are you related to one of them? Are they students of yours? Are you one of their friends too?
Starswell thought about this for a moment before answering.
I suppose, well, I was sent with them as their protector, so I guess they're bodyguard and sorts. I see. So they need bodyguards. They must be pretty important some way, right?
Yes, I suppose you could say that, he replied with a small smile.
You see, they are on a journey too.
Hey, look! There it is!
The traveling party came to a halt and looked up. Before them stood a tall ridge of mountains, rising up proud and gray, peaks reaching up high into the clouds. A road snaked up and wound up across the face of the mountains. where there stood on broad ledges and platforms all manner of buildings, ranging from tiny cottages to massive halls, all connected by narrow walkways and stairs carved out of the rock. They were dotted all over the mountainside, wherever there seemed to be space, with little regard for organization or pattern except the larger buildings that seemed to be higher up on the mountainside, culminating in a massive cylindrical keep which jutted out and towered over the rest of the town. Surrounding these buildings was a high wooden palisade, made from what seemed to be entire tree trunks. Where the road met the walls, there was a giant gateway made from enormous logs. These thin columns of smoke billowed from several tall buildings on the outskirts, spiraling up into the sky. The tiny figures of griffins could be seen milling about on the platforms, flying from level to level.
Whoa, they've been busy since the last time we've been here,
Gilbert muttered. As they stood before the massive gates of the fortified town, Twilight could not help but feel a little intimidated. The only gates he had ever seen that were any near as big as these gates were the gates of Canterlot, and those gates were always wide open, eagerly welcoming any visitors who came to the city. But with spiked palisade and heavily fortified gates, the entrance to Fasir seemed to be anything but welcoming. Gilbert gave a piercing cry to one of the guards at the top of the gate, who peered down at them. Twilight noticed that instead of the spears she most often saw used by Canterlot guards, she saw they carried something else. It was hard to make them out, but they seemed to be some sort of short staves. The guard made to open the door when they saw Gilbert and his family, but as soon as they spotted Twilight and her friends, they hesitated a moment. Twilight thought nervously, "Are non-Griffins welcome or something?"
It's all right. They're with us,
Gilbert called up to the gate. The guards looked less convinced, but nodded and called down to open the gates. The massive wooden gateway split down the middle, and each half seemed to slide away from each other, until the round doorway into town stood wide before them. The 4 ponies and 3 griffins entered the massive city, awestruck by their sheer size, not just in the scale of the buildings and the settlement itself, but the population. There seemed to be hundreds of griffins of all kinds, shapes, and sizes, crowding the walkways and platforms. Several were hawking. If the dear listener would pardon the unintended pun, and their wares were on the sides of the streets, while a few had set up wooden platforms where musicians and actors were performing to crowds of cheering griffins. Twilight was awestruck, but also delighted. Despite its rather intimidating outward appearance, it was like any bustling city in Equestria and beyond, active, crowded, and full of life. That said, many a curious eye was cast in their direction. Indeed, the 3 mares and 1 stallion were the only non-griffins in the entire town. One onlooker poked their heads out of the windows to get a good look at the newcomers. The crowds dispersed slightly before them as they walked.
Do you think we're celebrities or something?
Pinky asked no pony in particular. Twilight looked around. I guess they're just not used to seeing ponies around here. As they walked through the main walkways through the town, they found more and more griffins staring, some even falling on, until they came to the top platform and stood before the stone keep, complete with a small crowd of curious onlookers. For a few seconds there was silence, except for the murmuring gathering of griffins around them. As they stood still before the doors to the keep, then the wooden doors creaked open, and a group of about 5 griffins came out. 4 of them, likely the guards of the keep, were dressed in dark-colored plate armor, with brass goggles covering their eyes, and red helmets on their heads. Twilight finally got a good look at the sword staves they wielded, and widened with amazement. They weren't staves at all. They were muskets. They had read about such weapons before, but they were extremely rare in Equestria. The 5th, who stood taller than the rest, was dressed far more ornately, with golden trim around his armor and short cape. His left eye bore a long jagged scar, which complemented his no-nonsense scowl perfectly.
Who let these horses in?
He growled. Twilight frowned back at the griffin, and made stop forwards, but Gilbert put out a claw to stop her.
These ponies came with us, sir. They're seeking information about friends of theirs, and we suggested they ask here for here.
River paced back and forth, eyeing the ponies up and down, before turning back to Gilbert.
And you are?
Gilbert, sir. My Griffin and I have traveled up to seek refuge.
From what?
Asked the Griffin. For some strange creatures that have been sighted near our home, Gilbert replied. Twilight stepped forwards. That's why we're here as well, sir. You see, several of our friends were taken by—
No bird asking your horse!
The Griffin snapped.
We have heard similar stories from other travelers, Gilbert. I'm guessing they have black and yellow eyes?
Yes, exactly. We were told they were dangerous, so we came here for shelter. No better place than the mighty fortress town of Fasir, right? For the first time in the entire conversation, the Griffin smiled.
Indeed, no better place. This fortress is impenetrable. There are plenty of spare rooms and vacancies in the house and inns on 4th and 5th levels. You can take your family there.
As Gilbert gave his thanks and led his family away, the Griffin turned to his 4 ponies and smiled to disappear.
As for you, I'm afraid we have no room for you here. I'll be the judge of that, Gellert.
The Griffin, Geller, fretted even more as another Griffin emerged from inside the keep. This one was much smaller and younger than the commander, but dressed in a fine velvet jacket and a fur-lined cloak, instead of the bulky armor of his companion.
Gellert, sir.
Geller spat the last slurred out as if it was a bad piece of fruit.
I was unaware that you were in. As you can see, Gellert, I am.
Geller had replied calmly, steadily pushing the Griffin aside.
And unless I am mistaken, there is more than adequate amounts of accommodation for these 4 ponies. I can take these 4 from here, if you don't mind.
Geller stared daggers at the smaller Griffin, but said nothing as he stalked past, his 4 guards following quickly behind, back into the keep. Geller smirked slightly as he watched them leave, but returning back to the ponies just in time to catch Pinkie Pie, waving goodbye to the returning Gellert. He grinned.
I must apologize for Gellert. He could be a little touchy around newcomers, especially ponies like yourselves. My name is Galahad. I speak for the king. How can we help you today?
Twilight stepped forwards again. Well, first of all, a place to stay would be nice, but we can sort that out later. More importantly, we're looking for some friends of ours who were, well, taken from us yesterday. We were told that if any pony knew what might have happened to them, this is the place to go.
Galahad nodded. Yes, well, we would be more than willing to help however we can. But such appeals can only be made officially during royal court before council.
And what would that be?
Rarity asked.
The next court will be at sunset today. Come back up here then. You can make your appeal appropriately.
Geller replied,
Will that suit you?
Twilight looked at her friends and nodded. I suppose so. I'm guessing you're part of this council, since you speak for the king and all?
Indeed I am, miss. I'm afraid I have some business to attend to. Until then, welcome to Fazir,
he said cheerily, bowing slightly before returning to the inside to keep closing the doors.
So, Stars will ask, what do we do now?
Oh!
Piggy squeaked as he bounced up and down on the spot.
Gimme, Sportac! Gimme!
Twilight shrugged. I don't see why not. We're going to be here for a while. We might need to find some place to stay. Plus, I could use a bite to eat, she added as her stomach growled.
I'm on it!
Piggy trotted up to a grot. Was making his way into the keep temple soldier.
Excuse me, where's the nearest cake shop?
The guard was taken aback, not just by the odd question, but especially by the glaring pink pony who asked it.
A cake shop? I'm not sure if we have one of those. I guess you could try one of the bakeries. The closest one here is down on level 4.
Piggy smiled, caught on his shoulder.
Thanks!
And with that, she bounced from the stairway to the keep, down to the 5th level of town with friends in tow. The now rather confused guard simply shrugged and carried on to the keep.